Extra, extra. A new news contender
extra,
coming
another
up
YouTuber is doing news.
Extra.
Who needs news
You better
nowadays?
listen to these news.
Extra.
It isn't really news. It's more of a recap of the last year.
Yeah, that's right. A new fighter has just entered the scene in the realms of the news. You're currently watching the most brilliant news site on the internet, known as
News.
Oh, is that I hear? You criticizing the name for being way too creative? No, fam. You see, the longer the name is, it just qualifies how much of a moron it is, alright? Longer words does not equal smartness. Shorter words, however, equals a lot of smartness. And what is my name? When it comes to reporting names, no one is more epic than me. The name is Justin Time. I'm being the very late news guy here to bring you a sort of a recap of 2018, both from the news spectrum to the meme spectrum. If you check the description down below and you shake it, you're about to see that you could actually check out all the 12 different months of the year, and they will have a timestamp dedicated to them. But also from the spectrum of memes, I will also do 12 months with their own different timestamps, so you can go and shake and click and here and there to see what you might have missed out, or if you actually remember this stuff. Now, but in all seriousness, I'm actually going to do this every year starting from this year, where I do a recap of each year that has been, so we all have like sort of a moment to, you know, reflect and go back and see like how bad was actually this year, and also hating me for being the one who's doing the recap. So here's what you can do. You can choose either look at the entirety of this video, where I go through January to December, both news and memes in their own separate section. Or you can go out down to the description and jump between them. But yeah, description, timestamp, months, news, memes with their own different section. Also, by the way, this will be a great opportunity for you, the viewer of this video, to go down into the comment section and type out what you might think was the actual worst thing or best thing that happened in 2018, or the most memorable thing, etc, etc. You can also comment down below and actually criticize me if there was a news headline that I read out that was misplaced. This will be a fun and great opportunity where I will be the guy that just provides you with stuff, and you can be the correctors if you want to. You might be sitting there and asking, well, where did I get all these news from that I'm going to report to? Well, I'm glad you asked. The majority of them comes actually from one of my favorite YouTube channels that I definitely recommend you should check out. They are called Internet Today. In the description you can check them out. You can also click somewhere around this video if I put it up, and go check out the channel. But yeah, they're a really great channel because they report basically every single news that happens, sort of, that are major. They report a lot of tech news and everything. Like, just what if there's anything news related that you want to know, go check them out, please. Like, they're really freaking great. But let's get right into this, starting with the news section first. Let's see what happened there. In January, there was a whole slew of camels that was actually Botoxed, and they actually got sort of fired from a beauty competition. There was a news headline about Trump wanting $200 billion for his wall, and also the potential of building a wall right next to Canada. Then of course we have the infamous moment where Logan Paul happened to do that suicide forest video, and I don't think I need to go much more in detail to that. We also had Jake Paul in the news for making some very naughty clickbaity thumbnails and videos. Then we have the whole slew of people being excited to eat Tide Pods. 86 people actually got poisoned after they'd eaten Tide Pods. Now, even though this is a meme, it was still in the news that Uganda Knuckles was a bit racist to use. There was a new trend that also happened where you should drink pure water. Not filtered or anything, just pure unadulterated water. Even if it was smoggy, even if there was dirt in it or anything, that was a new trend that they tried to start. Trump also got a thumbs up from his doctor, but was it believable or not? Then we had a whole bunch of school shootings that happened in January. One infamous one was in Kentucky, including 17 others just in January. There was a potential volcano eruption in January as well. Then we had the news headline of Trump actually being in secret affairs with a certain porn star. Then we had a pretty exciting news from Oregon, where it was a new law that they provided for everyone, where you were allowed to actually gas up your car by yourself. There was also a guy in Thailand who went high on Viagra, ran around on an airport and had a big boner and started to throw shit at people while screaming at them. There was an airplane that was on a 11-hour flight, but after 4 hours of takeoff they had to turn back because there was one person that was missing from the plane. There was a revolutionary pill in January, where it was actually a pill where if you swallowed it, it could actually track your own farts. The Canadians got mad for Tim Hortons because of how badly they were paid, the employees that is, and how illy treated the customers were. You remember the actor that played the purple dinosaur Barney? Well, he happened to become a sex guru. Here we go with February. The first news that I caught in February was that there was a new trend that someone started to try out, where you would drink bleach and it would actually make you healthy. From Japan, there was a genius idea that was the sort of future tech of the next generation, if you want to say. It was basically, you could hire actors or paid people to go around with you for one day, and then having an iPad over your head, and then you would actually be able to talk to friends. So they even though they couldn't be with you there in real life, you still had the opportunity to live chat with them, but also a person would be there doing the things that you wanted your friend or girlfriend or whoever you wanted it to be to actually do with you. There was a cop who was calling the cops for being way too high and had hallucinations. There was a 9-year-old who accidentally showed porn in class instead of the Paddington movie in England. There was a broken toilet that forced a Norwegian airplane with 85 plumbers to turn around. Oh, and by the way, the toilet was not on the airplane, it was actually on the airport. J.K. Rowling was in the news for some controversy about Harry Potter. Then KSI was in the news with Joel Weller in boxing match. The controversial YouTuber known as Ricegum actually got his own commercial for the Super Bowl. Then we have Logan Paul in the news again after he tased a dead rat. Then we had the whole news about SpaceX and how amazing it was. There was a hilarious group on Facebook that had a good goal in mind, and that was to stop child pornography. But in doing so, they showed child pornography. There was a big airplane crash in Russia where every single passenger and captains all died. The Winter Olympics was in South Korea. Do you know the slow-mo guys? Do you know who Gavin Free is? Well, he actually had a fan coming home to his place, and he was actually armed, and it could have ended really bad there, but luckily, he survived. There was a bomb found at an airport in London. There was a cyclone in Tonga. Then we have KSI Deji versus Logan and Jake Paul in a big drama. There was a bunch of researchers and doctors that tried a new vaccination on mice that would cure cancer, and it turned out to be a great success. There was a new school shooting in Florida. Boston Dynamics actually invented a robot that can open doors. Then we have the president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, I believe I'm pronouncing it right, who left his position. McDonald's was in the news for having the decision of taking away the cheeseburgers from Happy Meals and reducing the calorie contained in a Happy Meal. There were two best friends that was actually dressed up as Kim Jong-un and Donald Trump at the Olympic Games this year. The Republicans of America actually complained that Call of Duty was the case that started the whole school shooting in Florida. There was a new app with a free game in it that would help people to stay away from the whole fake news drama that has been going around for a very long time now. There was a Trump dating site that was started as well. That was for Trump supporters and only for white peoples. There was a Florida politician that actually talked about the weapon laws, but instead he sort of forgot about it or just didn't want to talk about it. So instead he started to talk about how porn is really dangerous. There was two young kids that actually tried to get in to see Black Panther in the cinemas by dressing up in a very long brown coat and doing the whole, classic cartoon, we're being a one giant old man, but he didn't turn out to that well. There was a Florida minister who actually passed a law to bring more about God into the schools instead of bringing more and harsher weapon laws. There was a church in which if you brought your weapons and even bullets to a certain church, it will be blessed by the power of God, and there was a whole ceremony about it. There was 50 Missouri law stifters who actually considered that marrying with small kids or marry away a person was a-okay. There was a Japanese farmer who actually invented bananas with edible skin. There was a lady who was actually suing the California Department for Fish and Wildlife for ignoring the existence of Bigfoot. There was an 85-year-old man who did such a horrible fart on an airplane that they actually had to do an emergency landing. Then we have Wiki, if you remember her. She was new on Instagram and she sort of blew up in February, where she did the whole thing where she said that she was black even though everyone called her a white person. Now it's time for March. There was a study that indicated that people who don't use emojis in their text messages are considered very boring people. Then we have Trump in the news again, and it was about the whole that the tolls could pay more for the steel and the big economic change in the USA. And staying in America, Pizza Hut actually invented a new shoe called Pie Tops 2. There was a university who had a school shooting in March. There was a Canadian skier who was being caught for driving drunk after he had stolen a car to go back to his Olympic house. There was an article about Trump actually saying that he believes that people buy these weapons that are used illegally from the deep web and not from a weapon store. In the news from Russia, they actually allowed every sort of drug to be used during the FIFA World Cup. Trump was actually worried, and he said that there should be limits and laws and like a system for the violence in movies. Trump also stated that he would have run into the Florida schools without a weapon and actually beat the crap out of the school shooters. Duterte was in the news for stating that the women's should actually stay home and make food and be with the kids instead of doing other things. A drunk man actually lost a couple of $1,000 on the internet after he falsely had bought an ape from the internet. There was a guy who was being caught for having drugs, and he had actually swallowed them, and then he refused to shit them out. And it took, I think, like 5 days or something like that before he eventually shit them out. Someone found a very stoned Australian guy who had climbed into a pipe completely naked, and he was eating cheeseburgers from McDonald's. Scarlett was in the news for being very jealous of a Canadian program who was giving out free alcohol to heavy drinkers. There was a new train in Germany that was going to praise some very famous German people. One of the names were Anne Frank. The NRA, which is basically a program in America where they show commercials for weapons, basically, was being in the news for having very controversial programs. There was some really bad and nasty weather in USA where 5 people died. The Prime Minister of Sweden actually met up with Donald Trump in Washington. There was a trial for the murder of Kim Jong-nam. Trump was yet again in the news, and he was actually being stated that he could send unblockable text speeches to anyone in America. Have you heard of Martin Shkreli? He was basically in the news a couple of times before because he was actually behind the prices of a certain type of medicine. He was basically sentenced to 20 years in jail, and he also lost his Wu-Tang Clan album, which he had bought for the money that after he raised the prices of the medicine. The person who organized the Fire Festival in 2017 got sentenced to 40 years in prison after its giant catastrophe. Then we have the porn star known as Stormy Daniels, who was suing Trump. The creator behind Pepe the Frog was actually suing InfoWars and Alex Jones. There was a doctor who was doing a brain surgery on the wrong patient. There was a quote from George Bush where he stated that Donald Trump makes him look good. There was a guy that was in trial after he stolen a car, but then he also drove a stolen car to the trial in Hartford. There was a drunk Virginia driver who actually got a ticket after he had allegedly driven over himself. The National Restaurant Association kept on being mistaken for the National Rifle Association, NRA. There was a big cheese festival in the UK in which the people that organized it had to actually apologize for running out of cheese because they didn't expect so many people to actually come and visit it. Then there was the whole news articles about Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un meeting up in a neutral country that was neither on NATO's or the other sides. One example that was given out was actually in Sweden. Remember MathPad from Game Theory? Yeah, he was actually announced to become a father in March of last year. There was 2 people who actually died after having received mails containing bombs in America. And the background of it was probably of a racist. There was 2 people who died after receiving mail bombs from racist people in America. There was a big airplane crash in Nepal where 50 people died. There was also a helicopter crash in New York where 5 people died. Another Trump news, he was actually firing Rex Tillerson via a Twitter message. Then we had a whole spy drama involving England and Russia of the poisoned spy person, if you remember. Then there was a robot who could actually dance that was invented. In America, there was more than 20 different states that was actually suing Ajit Pai for his net neutrality. There was a teacher who shot a student during a weapons class. The foreign minister of North Korea was actually meeting up with Sweden's own foreign minister. There was a crash on a bridge in America. Then we had the sad news that Toys R Us was actually putting down its business. A new technology was actually introduced in which you could actually upload your consciousness onto a computer. Even though it's very far away, it's still fascinating to see that we are sort of close to actually having it as a reality. There was an Indian doctor who got fired after having been using a severed bone of a patient as the patient's pillow. There was a dad who was eating up a very expired 1997's cereal package, even though his wife was giving him plenty of warnings. A man in Russia found 54 severed human hands in the snow, but the Russians say it was just trash. There was a tsunami in Kenya where 15 people died. Do you remember that good old video keyboard cat? Well, that cat actually passed away last year. There was a cop in Sweden who actually got a call from a girl who was very depressed, but instead of helping her, he basically told her the best ways to kill herself, because apparently it isn't illegal to peer pressure someone into suicide in Sweden. Trump passed a law for death penalty to drug dealers. I'm gonna completely butcher up this name, but Tathra had a forest fire in which 70 houses was destroyed. 2 more African Americans died after being received mail bombs. Then we have the whole Mark Zuckerberg controversy where 50 million accounts was actually leaked. And he actually had been paid to show sites that would support the Trump campaign during the 2016 election. The presidential election in Russia was held and Putin won. The guy behind the mail bombs that killed 4 African Americans were believed to have actually have died in an explosion. There was a lot of people who died of suicide in Kabul. Trump was firing H.R. McMaster and replaced him with John Bolton. There was a study about the platypus being our savior against superbacteria. There was a drunk lady who actually mistaken the prison security house for a drive-thru. She tried to order breakfast, but instead she got arrested. A US senator candidate wanted to buy weapons to the poor. There was an Alabama lawmaker who was stated that he didn't want teachers to have weapons because most of them are women. Back to the Trump and Stormy Daniels drama, where Stormy Daniels was suing Trump's lawyer. Going back to the spy drama, the whole world was actually suing some Russian mandates. Kim Jong-un visited China. There was a murder crime in Sweden that was about a little boy named Kevin. And it's a very long backstory about it, but the 2 friends that were supposedly the killers of him was freed. There was a mom who was driving into a lamppost to prove to her kids that Jesus did in fact exist. Oklahoma actually passed a law in which kids are now allowed to wear seatbelts in cars. Let's jump into April and see what happened there. April Fool's Day was on the same day as Easter last year. There was an April Fool's joke that went a little bit too far, in which a lot of people actually believed that Morgan Freeman was dead. There was a mass shooting in the YouTube's headquarters. There were plenty of schools in America that started with a new idea, and that was transparent backpacks. There was a teenager who was suing InfoWars and Alex Jones for have been spreading fake news about him actually being the Florida school shooter. In Malaysia, there was a law that was passed in which all the news should be researched. If anyone were to spread or talk about fake news, those individuals could be sued up to $250,000. You remember that guy known as Jared from Subway? Well, he actually was in the news and he required $57 million from the judge because he actually stated to say that there was not enough evidence for why he should be in jail. You remember the column challenge? It was actually sort of brought back during April. Synthetic marijuana is actually way more dangerous than regular marijuana. 56 people was actually rushed to the hospital after having been puking blood and having blood pouring out of their eyes and ears, and 2 actually died over a overdose. If you happen to remember the good old Ronaldo sculpture, well, the sculptor of this Ronaldo sculpture actually came back and did a much more bigger and better improvement of it. It was a theater visitor who actually saved Jesus from his crucifixion. From the Philippines, it turns out that when they celebrate Easter, they do it with a crucifixion. And they do it with a man that has been crucifixed for 30 years. He actually has holes in his hand. There was a school shooting in Ohio, and the one who was badly damaged after the school shooting actually gets detention for having demonstrated against school shootings. There was a teenager who built a World War I replica trench in his mom's garden. There was a massive fire in Trump Tower. Russell Crowe actually organized a divorce auction. Trump was actually being pissed off at the FBI for supposedly find evidence from his lawyer that he in fact had paid Stormy Daniels. There was a huge attack in Doma. Mark Zuckerberg was in a 5-hour-long interrogation for the leaked accounts. The Swedish Academy was in the biggest drama yet, in which a person had been leaking out the Nobel Prize winners very early. There was an airplane crash in Alger. More than 60 people died after have been burning alive from an accident involving them making their own booze. There was a new long-term bus that had arrived. There was the whole drama about the YouTuber known as Touch the Light after he'd made a very controversial and very weird clickbaity video involving Fortnite and his 13-year-old sister being naked in the thumbnail. A bunch of people actually had called the cops in Scotland to report that a group of heavy metal fans was actually a suicide group that was going to commit suicide. It turned out to all be wrong. In Australia, there was an employee that lost $1.9 million in his case against his boss for allegedly had farted on him. There was a guy in Northern Ireland who had been caught stealing a hat and also taking a shit on the police station's table. There was a guy who did a bank robbery and then he drove to Taylor Swift's mansion and threw all the money over her fence in order to impress her. A cop in Argentina actually got fired after having allegedly said that a mouse had been eating a half a ton of marijuana that they had been confiscating. BP actually said that an oil leak outside of Australia's own coast could be a good idea for the economy. There was a big report about a wild tiger that was actually in Manhattan and causing a lot of chaos, but it turns out it was just a raccoon. H3H3 Productions was in the news for having some very controversial tweets that turned all out to be just some jokes that some misinterpreted. A teacher introduced Fight Club in the middle of her own lesson, so kids would actually fight against each other. There was a Japanese guy who created an 8-meter tall, 2-ton heavy robot that was actually fully functional. Mike Pompeo actually met up with Kim Jong-un and they were scheduled to meet up in June. There was a big and very serious airplane crash in which a engine exploded, took an entire wing piece off, and a window broke open and a woman flew out of the plane. There was a big forest fire in Sydney. For the first time in a very long while, Cuba actually got a new president that didn't have the name Castro in it. NASA sent up a rocket that would discover 20,000 new planets. Then we have the whole Starbucks controversy, where the employees at Starbucks called up the cops because there was a bunch of black people just sitting around and minding their own business. Trump wanted to cancel the Iran deal on May the 12th. In India, there was a guy that had been pretending to be a doctor for 5 months before he was caught. A dead monkey was found in a renovation house, and a lot of people actually started to speculate of how this dead mummified monkey had ended up there. There was an Italian archaeologist who dug up a skeleton that had an arm with a knife attached to it. In a leaked memo, Apple warned its co-workers to stop leaking out information. There was a woman in America who refused to sing their national anthem because she didn't have her gun with her. The citizens of Australia could apparently not pronounce their name correctly. A study showed that those machines in bathrooms that blow very hot air on you actually causes more bacteria on your hand than if you didn't use it. There was a drama video involving Vicky, the black girl, and Daniel Bergoli from Dr. Phil, in which a little girl known as Little Tay got her fame from. Jack Films actually got married. A horrible incident in Toronto involving a guy in a car was driving over a bunch of people. 15 got horribly injured and 10 was actually killed. In Nashville, there was a naked guy who shot 4 people at a waffle restaurant. In Sweden, they introduced a new threat against speeding drivers involving a brick in the road that would open up itself to slow down incoming speeding drivers. Macron and Trump met up with each other to discuss nuclear weapons. The Golden Gate murder was caught. Kim Jong-un met up with the leader of South Korea. A school in Ohio was offering a Fortnite scholarship. Instead of having $32,000 in debt, you would now only have $27,000 in debt. The only requirement was that you were a Fortnite player. Jake Paul got sued on $2.5 million. Johns Hopkins Hospital did an amazing miracle in which they transplanted a fully functional penis and testicles onto a patient, and this has all been planned ever since 2013. The president of Uganda was informing his people that oral sex is wrong and that the mouth is for eating and nothing else. Schools in America was actually removing good old analog clocks because students don't really look at clocks anymore. Massachusetts actually bans the term best friends from the earlier school years. Then there was the whole news about the bullet hunters being a thing. Then we had a guy on Twitter who was rambling about the concept of it being very racist and wrong to wear clothes from other cultures. Time for the news of May. There was a terror attack in Nigeria last May. There was the whole news about Trump and the steel tariffs. Logan Paul ended his vlogs in order to sell more merch. Trump actually agreed with the statement that he had paid $100,000 to Stormy Daniels, but he still says that what she says was false news. Then we had the whole slew of people that came out and said that Earth was actually flat. Despite them calling out that Earth was actually flat, they didn't actually know how everything works, but the majority seems to be it's based around the Bible. It was a pizza guy who received $180 after having been crushed under 400 pounds, or in kilograms term, 200 kilograms worth of cheese. There were some thieves in Australia who were trying to steal some gasoline, but rather they left a quite sour taste when they accidentally took out a different sort of scentful liquid from a truck that is meant to clean out the sewers. Another news headline was about how Buddhists actually take robot dogs that are malfunctioning and in desperate need of repair, and they hold funerals for them. And after the funeral, apparently they take the body and they disassemble all the parts and then they sell them. A university student was actually secretly recording his girlfriends in the shower, but then when he was confronted about it, he asked for more of a secure and more private of life. Kim Jong-un took his own toilet with him when he reached the Korean mountaintop. The Border Patrol in America found a abandoned suitcase, and what was in it? Nothing but a tiger, apparently. In Detroit, there was a gigantic paintball war that the cops had to take care of. The reason for it was that people wanted to shoot each other, but there were no guns, so they organized this giant paintball war instead. According to science, human bones makes it for the best knives. There was a train crash in Belgium. There was a volcano eruption in Hawaii. Mike Pompeo met up with Kim Jong-un. Trump left the global nuclear deal. The news about Lil Tay was actually a fake character in order to earn herself some money. After several months of shitting on football field, the serial shitter was actually caught, and it turns out that it was actually the principal himself. A whole slew of maps and people actually have forgot that New Zealand was actually a thing. There was an Australian sex expert that said that the parents should ask for the baby's permission before changing the diaper. There was a car bomb explosion in the little town that I live in. The eruption on Hawaii continues, and there was plenty of lava that was flowing over Hawaii. There was a new parasite that was covered in Swedish potatoes. While the world continues to get hotter and hotter due to global warming, there's a spot in the Atlantic Ocean that somehow made itself to become colder and colder. 90 people died of Ebola. There was the death crisis in Gaza. Nyan Cat actually celebrated its 7th birthday. Trump didn't want people to cancel the meeting with Kim Jong-un. Even more lava started to flow over Hawaii. Prince Harry got married. There was a woman at Tim Hortons that needed to shit, but the people that worked there thought she was a drug dealer. Instead, she shits on the floor, picks up the shit and throws it at the employees. American Airlines bans the use of insects, hedgehogs, and goats as support animals. A dog that was raised by a Chinese family for 2 years turns out to be a black bear. There was a new law in Kansas that forbids cops from having sex during a traffic jam. More lava continued to flow over Hawaii. A famous Swede by the name of Sven Yrvind actually built a boat, and he was scheduled to sail to New Zealand in 300 days. He was stated to say that he wanted to reach New Zealand around the time when he would celebrate his 80th birthday. 3 weeks after the volcano eruption on Hawaii, it became even more intense. According to some news headlines, Trump is not allowed to block people on Twitter because he is the president and his information should be for the main public to see. Trump shuts down the meeting with Kim Jong-un. Weinstein was handed over to the cops. There was a voting for abortion in Ireland. There was a girl who unfortunately died at home after the doctors had said that her stroke was actually just regular pain. The North Korean meeting starts all over again. There was a flooding in Maryland and a hurricane in Florida. There was a chaotic election in Italy. Trump finally meets up with Kim Jong-un. There was the possibility that McDonald's was actually supposed to open up in North Korea. Then we had a guy that refused to leave his parents' home. And then we have the infamous Jenny and Laurel. Let's see what happened in June. Apparently, the soldiers that are protecting and guarding the access to the nuclear bombs in America took LSD. And it shows on Air Force records. Alex Jones actually gave $3,000 to the man who refused to leave his parents' home. Florida woman by the name of Crystal Methvin actually got arrested for having injected herself with crystal meth. There was a bunch of pictures of people that was actually roasting marshmallows over the lava on Hawaii. And speaking of eruptions around the world, there was actually one in Guatemala as well. During Summerburst in Gothenburg in Sweden, there was 100 people that was convicted of using drugs during it. The great actress Kelly Marie Tran actually erases all of her social media after too much hate from The Last Jedi. Putin actually invited Kim Jong-un to a meeting in September. In Saudi Arabia, they finally allowed women to drive cars. Kanye West is bipolar. The highest plastic emission was apparently in the Mediterranean Sea. There was a lot of forest fires in Sweden. Remember Big Shaq? He actually released a new song in June last year. During these gigantic forest fires in Sweden, Italy actually sends help to help take down the forest fires. But the Swedes said, nah, we got this fam, we got this. On the 12th of June last year, Trump finally met up with Kim Jong-un. The famous rapper Eminem actually scared a lot of his audience during one of his concerts. An IRL streamer got a whole school evacuated during a Twitch call that led the people to believe that he was actually a terrorist. There was a pranker who got drunk at the Disney Hotel in Florida and said there was a shooting going on at the hotel. There was a fake school shooting that spread chaos all across America. In Richmond, Virginia, there was a guy who actually stole a tank without a cannon and started to drive over like GTA style. During the end of the season, the people from 8th grade actually received a unique gift, and it was a bulletproof shield. After the cop arrested this guy, it turns out that he was on LSD and he thought that he was just playing GTA. A guy was pulled over after have been jerking off too much, and he claims that he is Captain Kirk from Star Trek. To prepare themselves for the FIFA World Cup, the Russians were forced to learn how to smile. IHOP became IHOB. A company introduced Alice 2, the real step for women's future. A guy who was expert at playing clarinet actually got his dreams crushed to study at his dream school because of his girlfriend. There was a new law in Russia that stated that it should be illegal to criticize the Russian National League. There was a blind man who was fighting for the blind's right to own weapons. There's a guy that was about to get arrested. He took a break at a McDonald's and refused to put the handcuffs on until he had finished his meal. In Buffalo, there was a giant machete fight going on, but one guy decided to take a trimmer with him. Former Trump campaign manager actually made fun of an immigrant girl with Down syndrome. Some soccer news. When Sweden lost to Germany, one particular player from the Swedish league actually received a lot of hate messages and racist comments for playing so badly. Then we had the massive drama of TanaCon. There was a study that said if you were a gamer, you're basically having a sickness. A whole slew of fans actually needed $200 million to try to redo The Last Jedi. There was a whole bunch of news articles that Trump was actually supposed to meet up with Putin in Finland. A boss actually stole 370 pounds from his company in order to buy some cats. Key rings that are made for self-protection is illegal in Texas, but you can still own a gun. A bunch of floods in the world are so polluted with drugs that the eels actually gets high of cocaine. The dog mayor in Minnesota actually went off after his 4-year period. There was an article about how the world is actually losing a lot of its sand because there's a whole slew of black markets to sell sand apparently. A drunk driver was being caught after he made a sandwich to his dog in order to cause troubles for some students that were cheating on their tests. Algeria actually turned off all of its internet. John McAfee actually wants to become the president in 2020. What happened in July? Some new light was brought to an article about how Adam West and his friend was actually kicked out from an orgy party when they were dressed up as the Riddler and Batman. There was a stork with a tracker on it, and the tracker got stolen from a guy who used it to call for 20 hours worth of phone calls. A worker zone accidentally uploaded the entire movie instead of the trailer. You remember the Sven Irvind story that I mentioned before? Well, he actually cancelled his trip to New Zealand because there was a plane crash in South Africa. Then we have the plane bay story. There was a teenager who spoke about how massaging the groin should be legal. The founder of Pepper Jones actually got fired after he had been saying the N-word. There was a study of how a nut actually increases the amount of sperms and power that you can jizz. And they call it a nutrish diet. Facebook actually apologized after marking a part of the Declaration of Independence as hate speech. A woman got fired after being called in the cops reporting a black man with socks in her pool. A drunk driver was caught and he said that he didn't drink when he was driving, but he had rather drank when he was stopping next to stop signs. Then in Wisconsin, the infamous dog fucker came back with a video where she allegedly killed a dog during her video. Trump actually met up with Putin in Finland on the 6th of July 2018. The infamous YouTuber known as FusiTube did his own sort of Comic-Con / Tanacon, and it was also a complete disaster. The planet Jupiter actually got 12 new moons. There was some light shed upon the article about the old D.B. Cooper incident. A family of marmots actually ate Paul Ryan's car. Senator from Arizona who had allegedly killed his own mom actually supports good people with weapons. There was a man who got arrested for having stabbed a person with a knife after his seat reservation was stolen during the first Purge movie. A video of cops was leaked where they used the old flip a coin method in order to determine if they should arrest the person or not. There was a model who posted selfies with her own dead father in order to gain likes. Dennis Rodman actually invited Kanye West to North Korea because he wanted them to make a song about their glorious leader. There was a guy who had intercourse with a horse, and he said that the horse let him have intercourse after he had been flirting with it. Last year's summer was the hottest record in Sweden's history, and it was also the biggest, and it was also the most expensive and biggest case in order to stop forest fire in Sweden's history. Then we had the Ninja versus Ligma. Scientists actually found some water on Mars. A bunch of scientists actually found a 2,000-year-old sarcophagus with 3 skeletons in it, some red and disgusting looking fluid in it. Despite all of this, people actually wanted to drink this. Then we had the construction of the gigantic Jeff Goldblum statue in London. Face Sensor actually gave up on his weather girlfriend in order to play more Call of Duty. After nearly 40 years of his career, the water skating squirrel actually ended his career. Demi Lovato almost died of an overdose. James Gunn actually got fired from Guardians of the Galaxy 3 by Disney, and Chris Pratt, Dave Bautista, Vin Diesel, and all the other supporting characters on the Guardians of the Galaxy actually supported him. Then we had the news about how people are into the idea of fucking Bigfoot, including a certain Wrinkle Man. Two ladies were eating french fries in their car, and a drunk guy actually came up to the car, swinged his dick around it, and then shit it on the car. The CDC was reported to say that they want people to stop cleaning out and reusing already used condoms. A guy who claimed to be an animal rights activist actually stole a shark, and he actually put it in a baby carriage. Another serial school shitter was actually being caught.
Let's get into August and see how it was there.
So last year's August, there was a whole slew of media that started to erase Alex Jones from their platforms. NASA sent up their own project that was to go to the sun. NASA released their newest space probe, and it was meant to visit the sun. There was a fake news headline they called Wildfire that stated that there were two people who were from a residential homes, and they had escaped from their place in order to go to a heavy metal concert. In Japan, apparently, you could hire a person to be your uncle. There was a new trend started by stoners. Their new trend was that they were going to make the nature more green and better by picking up all the trash that people might have left. We had the Reinki drama, I think you say it. You see it down here. I can't pronounce stuff right. A lot of people were actually smoking melons. Not in the sense that they were actually smoking it, but rather, smoked. Like smoked salmon. You get the point. There was an old lady who shot a cyclist because he was jerking off. There were a lot of parents that were paying people on Fortnite to make sure that their kids would not be owned. Then we had the article about the classic game Dead Cells, who got 2 reviews. One was from the original guy, and the other one was a complete copy by someone who worked under IGN. Melissa Howard destroyed her own political career after she had spread a lie that she actually had went to college and taken a degree. While NASA might have sent out a space probe, they also sent up weather balloons to check on the ozone layer of Earth. And a student actually taped on a little note to Donald Trump on one of those balloons. One of those balloons flew over a golf course where Trump was playing, and people thought it was a bomb threat. Bill Cosby was stated to say that he being accused for sexual assault will hurt his reputation. An airport terminal in Germany had to completely shut down after they found a whole slew of sex toys at their terminal. An Indian lawmaker was dressed up as Hitler in order to criticize their prime minister. Johnny Depp accused his ex-wife for having been shitting on their bed. A whole slew of firefighters actually had to go on an alarm in order to rescue a parrot that was stuck on a roof. Once they arrived, the parrot actually told them to fuck off. A dude from Spain took a drug test, and it showed that he was positive on all the drugs. Now we have the incident with a fake Tinder girl known as Natasha, who staged her entire Tinder profile in order to get 100 men to meet up at the same place in order to do a so-called social experiment. There was a candidate in Florida that had a psychic link between 3 blonde aliens, apparently. If you remember that 2,000-year-old chest with the red, disgusting liquid in it, well, another bunch of researchers actually find a 3,000-year-old cheese in Egypt. And yes, a lot of people wanted to eat it and combine it with this red juice that they found as well. According to some biologists, if you're very lazy, it is a very effective survival method. There was a crocodile in Florida who used a pool noodle in order to cross a river. A real social experiment showed that kids were being peer pressured by robots. A guy who was delivering beer talked to a guy who was suicidal and wanted to jump off from a bridge, and he offered him a 12-pack of Coors Light, and he never jumped off. 25th of August last year was the fight that so many had been waiting for. Was the time for KSI versus Logan Paul. During the NFL 19 video game tournament last year in Jacksonville, Florida, there was a mass shooting going on. A guy named Paul used dating apps in order to get free food. Alex Jones accidentally showed his mobile history and it was filled with transgender porn. A really old and extinct species of horse were found in permafrost. A new law passed in Missouri last August, and it involved that you could marry if you're 16. A cop from Texas was stated to say that he didn't like the idea of women being able to drive on the roads. A guy from Kentucky faked his own heart attack in order to go to the cafeteria at the hospital so he could get food. A man was being arrested after he had been stealing a lot of lemons. 800 pounds of lemons. Time for September news. The last season of Adventure Time aired last September, and it's sad to see that it actually has gone. There was an election in Sweden. You ever heard of Malachi Love Robinson? Well, he has a very cool little story that I really recommend you checking out a little bit more deeper into detail. But he was basically sent into jail in Florida. And speaking of Malachi Love Robinson, there was a young man who pretended to be a doctor at a children's hospital. And speaking of that guy, in Georgia there was a woman being arrested after being pretending to be a dentist for a very long time. There were Gwyneth Paltrow's company who were being investigated. Some cops caught a crocodile hunter with the pistols after he had been driving over some kids. A hacker actually made sure that Snapchat and other apps that use the GPS so they would show incorrect but pretty hilarious street names and city names. A guy claimed that he misunderstood a firecracker for a cigarette. Then Paul McCartney came out and talked in a lot of articles about how he and the rest of the Beatles had some really unique sessions when they were not playing on stage. A romantic novelist who wrote a book of how you kill your man was actually being caught after she killed her man. A cashier was actually using a bong in order to fight off criminals that was using bear spray. Some Australian politicians attacked a 9-year-old girl because she didn't stood up during their national anthem. The NRA were very mad of how split it is in the children's program between women and foreigners, so they showed a Thomas and Friends picture with KKK hats on it. During a blackout, a woman thought that she had some candles in her basement, but when she lit it, it turns out it was dynamite. You might not be the biggest fan of sport, but in tennis there was a gigantic article that came out with Serena Williams and how she was acting. Then we have the sad news that Telltale actually had to shut down their company. A very odd article was brought up from Stormy Daniels where she claimed that she noticed exactly what Trump's looked like, and it actually looks like Toad from Mario. An Arizona man pretended to have Down syndrome so he could hire babysitters that would bath him and change his diapers. Miss Hitler pageant was being shut down by Russian social medias. A bunch of cops tried to lay a dead whale in some trash cans, but they didn't think it was a great idea. After long and cringeful years of having Musical.ly, a new giant that came up to the stage, and it was known as TikTok, and it basically took over what Musical.ly was. A lot of news sites were actually showing a clip of a raccoon that was climbing a very tall house. At the park, they were swarmed by aggressive goats that was feasting for human urine, and those goats were being taken away from the park by a helicopter. A woman was at a vacation in Spain, but she didn't feel very good, so she went to the doctor. And it turns out that the doctor actually found a dead tortoise in her baby maker. Time for my favorite month, October. Some doctors were actually being stated that if you were to consume a little bit of radioactive materials, it would actually be a health benefit. A big forest fire was created after a gender reveal party was gone wrong. A guy was released from prison and he went home to the house he had on sale to set up some traps. He got into prison again. A bunch of drunk birds were creating chaos in Minnesota. A guy actually told the cops that a ghost had been planting some meth all over him after he was attacked by an axe. Then we have the really cool and clever little section where a Banksy painting was being auctioned off, and the RAM of the painting itself was actually shredding the picture during the auction. A stripper was being paid by a student to perform at Texas Middle School. Edmonton Cobbs actually apologized after being calling a person mulatto during an Amber Alert. 12-year-olds were actually being caught and sent to prison after being playing trick-or-treat in Virginia town. Then we had a drama about the better hell. A lot of bombs were sent to both Clinton, Obama, the White House, and CNN. Advanced Miami Town, I think you pronounce it like that. Candidate actually worked as a cam girl, and she was selling used panties. At Canada Aquarium, there was a guy swimming naked in a tank filled with sharks. A teenager was actually baking some cookies by using her grandpa's ashes and took them to school. Viagra turns out it is actually vapeable, but it turns out if you do that, it is really lethal and really dangerous. Colorado got a second chance in order to vote away slavery. A Russian lady who claims to be the oldest living person in the world, age 129, claims that she only had one good day in her entire life. Then we had the huge news of the legalization of marijuana in Canada, and they sold out super quickly. And while it was happening, a guy was dressed up in Canada as a stoned kangaroo, and he was talking about how to use drugs in a more sort of safe manners. A guy got arrested on a plane after being touching a woman's baby maker, and he said that he did it because Trump said it was okay. Another guy was being freed from prison, and he ends up stealing a car from the prison. Apparently there was a Catholic version of Pokemon Go, where you actually go around and collect popes. Alright then, November it is. First there was the Jake Wool and Jake Berkman drama. Students were actually making bricks out of human urine. A researcher at Antarctica actually stabbed one of his colleagues after the colleague refused to stop spoiling some books. A man was actually complaining of very rude behavior towards his son after he had been dressing him up as Hitler for a Halloween party. A Florida mayor was being accused after had been requesting sex in exchange to install speed bumps. A school administrator was being accused after being showing up drunk during an alcohol awareness week. Then a crazy discovery that was about the Oumuamua, I think you pronounce it, which claimed to be an asteroid, but many speculated it could be actually the first real UFO or a space probe from another planet. Black Twitter was actually trolling around on Twitter and made Trump supporters look very stupid on it. A guy without pants was actually falling through the roof at a Waffle House. Dog shot man survives, and the man protects the dog. In a Georgia building wall, nearly 1,000 human teeth were found. A racist student was being hurt by his teacher, and the teacher received $61,000. After the whole slew of people wanting to eat Tide Pods, they actually came out with a new brand where it actually was a box that you could empty out the Tide Pod liquid in it, and it reminded people of a bag-in-box, and they actually wanted to drink it instead. Then we had a new metal band that just popped out of nowhere, and it was called Threatening. But apparently their whole career and why they were so famous was actually just a stage sort of play. It was fake, but a really good fake though. Chinese archaeologists actually found 2,000-year-old booze in a very old chest. A bunch of Russians was actually dressed up as a cardboard cutout bus in order to go over a bridge that was only meant for vehicles. A woman from Texas actually had a divorce, and it ends up in an explosion where her wedding dress actually flew 15 miles away. A drunk guy was actually shopping online, and when he wakes up, he finds himself with a pig, a peacock, and a gigantic salamander next to him. Teens are apparently boiling sanitary plates in order to get high. On Kickstarter, there was a new revolutionary fleshlight technology that made big success. Amazon took away an application where Santa Claus was actually threatening kids with death. Texas students soon actually got to learn about how slavery had a major role in the Civil War. After its long journey, the space probe known as InSight actually landed on Mars. Then we have the absolute massive cow in Australia that made a huge success on the internet. A guy was suing the entire island of Hawaii after they had been giving him a heart attack from a fake-out missile attack. A woman was sent into prison for 3 months after the cops had mistaken her cotton candy for meth. Then we have the gigantic news of how on the YouTube platforms the battle between who's going to be the most subscribed channel was going to be either T-Series or PewDiePie. And finally we end on December. YouTube Rewind was being released and so many people hated it. It actually was hated so badly that it became the most disliked video in YouTube's history. However, when Avengers Endgame trailer was released, it broke major records for most views in like 24 hours time. However, a clever little trick was put on where they actually halved the amount of people who saw it in order to make it look like Thanos' snap was actually real. A Florida doctor was being accused after having been peeing himself, recognized the love of deputies during a DUI arrest. 2 nuns took $500,000 from a Catholic school and they played it all off on gambling. Duterte was stated that he wanted to kill all the Catholic bishops. A 9-year-old was actually calling the cops after having been told by the parents to clean its room. Soldier Boy made a gaming console. A lot of people claim that they didn't want Santa to have any gender. They wanted him to be genderless so he could represent more people. The sad news that Hentai Heaven actually got shut down. Quebec actually was suing a stage play involving a talking penis, but they were suing it because they used a fake cigarette. And back to threatening, where he came out and talked about his fakening and how successful it was. Man poses as ex-fiancé to hire hitman to kill himself. A guy dressed in clothes that said cocaine were being caught after having been spraying cocaine on a bunch of places. A judge put down his career after being saying that a lawyer should perform oral sex on Viggo Mortensen. When the cops was asking a drunk driver, he handed them over a hamburger instead of his driver license. And the final headline that caught my eyes from 2018 was that PewDiePie, Flying Kitty, Dolan Dark and Grande made their own YouTube Rewind, and it made so big of a success that it became the most liked video in YouTube's history. Alright then, now when the news are over, let's look into the world of memes, and let's start innocent enough with January and see what kind of memes we had there. So in January, of course, we had the very famous and beloved Uganda Knuckles. I think we all remember him. We also had some memes about the Tide Pods. We had a bunch of Connect 4 memes. We also had the pretty infamous one, Somebody Touching My Spaghetti as well. Now let's jump into February and see what memes they had. So of course we had the infamous Burger King foot lettuce memes. When the Super Bowl occurred, there was a bunch of Super Bowl memes. Let's jump into March and see what memes they had in store. A whole slew of No You memes. Then we had the memes about Flat Earthers and Flat Earth itself. Then we had the guy with the Change My Mind that you could title whatever you wanted on memes. There were a couple of Wreck-It Ralph memes. Then we had Peter Griffin's Falling Over memes. We had the Savage Patrick memes. We had the memes about Gru from Despicable Me when he's doing his plans as memes. We had the American Oil memes. There was a couple of memes just involving good dogs. Of course, who could we forget the very beloved Glu Glu Gaga also. It's time for the April memes. There was the Honey Tell Me What's Wrong memes. A little meme from The Simpsons known as Shuckles, I'm in danger. There was the Hard to Swallow memes. There was a whole slew of It's for Real Estate memes. There was a couple of memes involving Mark Zuckerberg during his Facebook drama. Then we had the normal, tactical and assault memes. Onto the memes of May. We had Infinity War memes. There was a massive explosion of the Trumpet Boy and the Girl memes. Back to the Despicable Me, where there was a bunch of memes involving Gru saying the word girls. Then we have Is This a Meme memes? From Childish Gambino we got the This Is America memes. Onto the June memes. There was the classic meme 5 blacks and 1 white. The absolute slew of E. Then there was a couple of memes about that you need to stop killing in order to make... There's a couple of Luigi memes. Let's give it into the July. There was a whole bunch of 4th of July memes. There was the meme that PewDiePie sort of helped become famous, the 2 birds memes. There was the car salesman memes. Then there was the memes about how many days you've gone without having sex. There was a bunch of memes involving if you remember this. There was the whole slew of the black man crying as memes. A bunch of roasting memes involving EA and its cost on games and also its DLCs. There was a bunch of memes involving Thanos when he's mourning. There was a whole bunch of Thanos memes as well, where he is getting the full Infinity Gauntlet. There was the Gandalf Gate memes. The cat memes known as "You got loops, brother." Then there was a whole bunch of memes where Thanos is reflecting about his home, involving him and Doctor Strange. Let's walk into September. There was the memes involving real name of artists. There was the memes involving the EU wanting to ban memes with the Article 13 sort of. Then we had some memes involving Eminem when he was in fear of certain rappers. The absolute devastation on every site involving the Bongo Cat as memes. There was a bunch of memes involving the movie Ratatouille, but with flashbacks. Then we have the adaptation memes involving manga, anime, and Netflix. And the memes for the horny guys out there with Bowsets. Let's jump into my month, shall we? October. During the first day of October, there was a whole slew of memes based around the Halloween of the year. A good old classic was resurrected, which was the skeleton dude as memes. There was a bunch of memes that was about this was made by a certain gang. There was a couple of memes involving Barbara's 76th birthday as well. Remember that we have yet to touch November. Of course, what would any November of any year be without its No Not November memes? There was a little bit of the Madagascar penguin memes, and then a pretty infamous one that was known as the surgery on a grape memes. At last, we're on December's dawn. There was a bunch of memes involving JonTron after he came back with his newest video at the time, where he would buy the entire stock. A couple of YouTube Rewind 2018 memes, where they basically roast it or they just make fun of it in general. There was a bunch of New Year memes. The big explosion of Big Shunkus memes. Who could forget the good old classic Polar Express with this kid as a meme? And the very last meme that I got from the 2018 was a meme involving iCarly.